Gulchish wujin khasati lakat yuhan. Ya iyach linkit qa an hatuguchla an. Hayach linkit qa hastu in hatuguchla an. Ye awe hatuwati. At ya wane panachroil tsini at. Joach tu ke tleat gewa atatu khautusha at. Wan qanins ya tlel tuul ani at nikdain da dunye kan nikdain qaduqa tlel tua ashku hadaye wuti aqawe hatuwasagu wujin aya yigach ye hak qodneer atlein atawe hakata kawaha ajowe atlein aya nak atina khayati Ik aya satini dekat Johan. Suye jagach tune shukwa. Ni to agessa gut lingit khinach yu khayitlatki. Okay.
You said yake aya ilksatini. It is good you see it.
Yak aya yuch satini. It's good to see y'all.
Oh, yake aya. All right.
And then sometimes I'll say yak wuchin khasati. What's that one?
It is good we're together.
Yeah. So it's good to see you all. It's good that we're together. I get that from Kushta Koish Del Fawcett. He said, thanks for being with us. We recorded like a whole bunch of these. So what was supposed to happen is you get on the ferry in Southeast Alaska, and as you got near a port, like say you were going to Sitka, you would hear the recording of Kushta Koish Gulchish Ha'in Chisati Ya Hayaguikt Ya Dua Shitka Aya Yidu Asak Hasta Ani. Every single port is supposed to do that. We recorded it. We sent it to the Alaska Marine Highway 10 years ago. And then it got killed by a politician.
Oh my gosh.
Because he said, well, there's a lot of dialects, so we want to respect the dialects, so we'll just kill the project. That's how they said. So
you dot su today again. Let's do it again. I don't know. It's time to do it again.
Right? Let's do it again. Yeah, so we should try to bring that back. I mean, I've got the recording somewhere. I mean, he's gone now. Like, that's the sad part. We work with these elders, and these were like, politics and language are just very strange, but we'll talk about that some other time. Any language questions or thoughts before we get back into our running through these verbs? We're almost done with the objects, and we move to subjects. Then we're going to start to do them at the same time. Then I want to shift and like really revisit the perfective with the intention of looking at exactly what happens in contraction. So we could start to say, oh, that perfective changes like this. Oh, that thing changes like this. You take this vowel out, that thing becomes this.
Yeah, I do have a quick question, hopefully. If I say Tlieyewuti or Tlieyewuti, what's the difference there? What does that ye do?
Yeah, so Tlieyewuti, I would think it stopped like so. It stopped. So you sort of
okay, like yeah, okay.
Happened.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's good. Sheesh.
And then Tliey is a good form for like stop what you're be still. Be still.
I have probably a quick question. I was real interested in the speaker last night, and so I was looking up the word for kindness, and so Tlein was kindness, and Tlein is the verb. And I thought, what? Just that one vowel change makes it a noun?
Yeah, and I do think there needs to be a little bit more analysis with this. Like we could find a whole list of them where what happens is you make it ungrammatical, right? So on that cannot be, it doesn't work as a verb, right? Just like if you say coming back, okay, let's say kliye, we just talked about that kliyeyati, right? To be still. So if you wanted to say kliye ti, that would be the noun for being in stillness, right? Chekti, being united. Kuwati, the weather to be a certain way. Kuti, the weather. So yes, you can take a lot of these state verbs, like chitzin is they are strong or it is strong. Chatzin is strength, right? And so there's a whole bunch of examples. Kusichan is love of people, like they love people. There's a third person subject in there. And then kusachan is love. So there's a whole bunch of these that do that, where really but sometimes it's a little bit unpredictable what happens with the stem. So yati going to ti. And so like we would run into this years ago. So we'd say Llingit hasiti, we are human beings. But if you could say ha Llingit sati, our Tlingit identity. So now it's become a noun, and that noun, because we see the possessed form, follows all the rules of possession. But if we took ha off of there, it'd say Tlingit sati, Tlingit identity. And so we see this as well. So we go kudziti, to exist, and then we go to kusti. So there are a whole bunch of these that do that, where it goes into some form that just, we call it being ungrammatical. Like a verb cannot do that. Like it doesn't make sense for the verb to do that. And for a lot of these, there's state verbs that go minus I in the imperfecta with no irrealis, no negative. That seems to be a pretty common pattern. And there's a whole bunch like someone, I can't remember who was talking to me about. They wrote this big thing about like there's ain't no Tlingit word for luck. And I was like, yeah, it's tlachet. And they said, I thought you told me there was no Tlingit word for luck. I was like, well, I certainly don't remember saying that. But tlachet would be they are lucky. Tlachet would be luck. So there's a whole bunch of these things that do that. It's a very common pattern in terms of, but then sometimes they follow like, and sometimes there's a little bit of confusion, it seems like. Let me pull up an example of one of these. So there's one that I've been sort of trying to figure out. Is there two ways to say this, or is there some sort of switch that happened, right? So, or let me change these. So I just copied and pasted this. So, do ya a yawane can switch. Like if we switch, like what is do ya a yawane? Anybody know that one?
It doesn't mean he is respectful.
It means they respect them, or they respect, that's what it means. They respect them. So if you change the first one to at ya a yawane, they respect things, or they respect something, right? And so then you can go at ya awune. That's the noun version that I have heard for this one. But I have also heard Ya'at Wune. And I'm not exactly sure why, because but I don't know if that's incorrect or not, right? Because Wait, didn't I say there's no incorrect in language learning? Is that what I said? Okay. But like if you look at how the verb works, like you have en, ya, a, ya, u, subject, zero classifier, ne. Right? I know how it works as a verb, right? The command form for this would be do ya ayagune. But this is one respect that I think it goes a little bit all over the place when we sort of use it. Not, I don't exactly know why. I think because it's an unusual verb, right? And I would say it's unusual because you have the noun, which is, so you're going to use, so like if we said at ya ayawune, they respect things. Do ya ayawune, they respect him or her, them. How would I say they respect me?
Achya awane.
Achya ayawune, they respect you. Iya ayawune, right? So it is a little bit unusual because whoever is getting respected is getting this possessive pronoun, right? So it bounces it out to this indirect object. The other things that are unusual is is built into it, right? Like those are uncommon things. It also has ya and which is also not very common, just to have the irialis just built in there. You see it with ka more often than ya. And then you have the subject right there. So for me, when people ask, how do you say respect as a noun? I tell them, well, my preference is atya awune, because that's what I heard George Davis say, and that's what I heard Cyril George say. And so, but then to a lot of people, if you want to use it as, they tend to want to use it as a noun a lot. But then we have this sort of, we have these things, I have these, what did I say, the things that grind my gears. You know, these are the things that that bother me a little bit. I get a little grumpy about them. Get a little grumpy about. One is putting the plural marker onto clan names. So the Shukach Adis and the Yanyedis and the Kagwantans. That's just a personal thing. I think we could just say, because if you spoke Tlingit, you'd say, Ohana wa Shukach Adi. Dataya yan hasnak kagwantan. Like that's plural. It's already plural. Don't worry about it. And then the other thing is sometimes people want names for all kinds of things, but then they want them to be real easy, right? And so,
John Wayne syndrome. Sorry.
oh,
That's what I got.
you can. And so sometimes people will put a title for a program, and they'll say, Ya'at Wune, respect all things. And then people think that that's what that phrase means. And I think there's two ways to say respects all things. What do y'all think? Kitakat, yeah. And so I guess I'm gonna say a yagudne, because it needs, now you gotta revert to the command form of the verb, right? If you're telling, because how do you say the, like in English, you just sort of say it respects everything, right? In Tlingit, you have to switch to the command form of the verb if you're telling someone to do that, right? Which is what that phrase is often doing. And then how would you say, and then, but you could also say, so there's a command form, right? So this is where, whenever people want translations, I'm like, well, what exactly are you saying? Like, tell me exactly what you're saying, because there's gonna be 6 ways to say it in Tlingit, right? So for example, you could say, now I'll say there's 2 ways to say this one. Maybe there was only one way to say respect all things. Well, no, there's 2, okay. I'll say there's 2 ways to say we respect all things. And let me give you the verb.
Haya awone.
Ayautuane. Right, so we're gonna say ayautuane. There's our verb. It's in an imperfective, right? Ayautuane.
Stikatat ya ayatuane.
Okay.
Ayatuane.
The cut at ayautuane. Okay. Now there's one other way, and I'm gonna change this verb into a noun. But that means I have to use a different verb. Atya'awune. Cut at.
Neek.
Can we change it to a hortative?
You could say like, let us respect all things. You could do that. You could certainly do that. So that, ooh, that would be interesting.
Ordative, such a scary word.
It's fun though. Fun one.
But we're gonna turn this into a noun. I don't know if this one does a hortative, actually. It's interesting. At yawane dekat at.
Say the English gloss again, please.
Say
Say the English gloss again, please.
Oh.
What the English would be?
We give respect to all things.
Oh. Hajiwu.
Well, so hajiwu would be we have respect. We have it.
Ah.
Yawane hajiwu.
Hade.
Had-
Inappropriate. That's a
Bring out-
different.
Give me respect. That's how hade, I think, should always be translated as gimme.
Ah.
Like that's the
Hade.
English equivalent for hade. There's always a different way. You can always use a handling verb for hade. But in Qu'ig, you're supposed to say hade when they call your name. And you can say hade with people you know really well. But it's also a shortcut. At ya'awone, and this is one of those things where you could move the words around. The cut at, or you could say chut the cut at ya'awone a jich to t.
G to T. Oh.
So what this does is some of these handling verbs, you get the repetitive form by putting it onto the directional suffix, right? Because you say achjit te, right? Ajich to t. We regularly give that thing to it, whatever the thing is. To t works really well, or the t verb, for abstract concepts.
Hmm.
Kusachan oe achjit. Gulchish gao achjit. Thanks for giving me time. Nick,
Yeah. Well, I have a question when you're done, if you have more.
I'm never done. No, okay. What was the question?
Yay. So we say ikuayahuan when we see people struggling on the stand, but they're not always crying. They're not always in a space of being emotional. I think I save that for when they're emotional. And I want a different phrase for when it's not quite emotional and they're just kind of struggling. In fact, you were doing a video once at the library and you had a hard time putting your words together. So you kept saying it over and over and over again. And you did another take and it didn't quite get there. I mean, this was like 2015 or 14, something like that. And I just did this thing with my hands where I shuck it like this, kind of telling you, shake it off, just shake all that stuff off and then do it again. And then that take took for some reason. And that's what I'm trying to come up with, something of that nature. So I found this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, not the sek or not the sa. If you wanted a command, not the sa would be really good.
Nadasa.
Mhm.
So you could put the dagenach in front of nadasa and it would say that in a command form.
Yeah.
And nadaseak, what does that do to it then?
Well, usually in the command form, I hear the KW fall off. So the KW, so the verb here is to breathe. And so
Hmm.
you usually get like chaseok or daseok for like the act of breathing. Because it's one of these things that has, it is a thing, but it's composed of multiple motions. Like
Mhm.
it's a thing, so Tlingit does like to note that. Like it's a thing, but it's composed of multiple things happening at the same time. Or a repetitive
Ah,
process, sort of. So,
oh,
because we say like, and we first learned this one, I did from Neish Natasa. Or we should have actually Naidasa in here. Um, so note that. Because when you have a plus D classifier, the command must have the pronoun for the command. That's why
hmm.
you say Gaidanak, or you say
Ah,
Giddahan, right, instead of Gaddahan. So that's why the I pops in there. So anytime you've got plus D, so that's help me, but you'd say Ishat she, touch your head. So just go straight to there's no pronoun necessary. So there's no pronoun necessary for a singular command unless there's a D in the classifier.
so you could say naidasa
Yeah,
to a group of folks, and that would be the equivalent, maybe, or it would be appropriate in a space where you said something really serious. You're trying to calm everybody down, maybe even a joke sort of thing,
yeah,
Naidasa,
uh, yeah. So need to
just to cut you on.
one, naidasa would be more than one, and then the context for this one was we were doing like, okay, what if I say neich nidasa, kuch nidasa? Those are two opposite things. What are they?
So
If I say neich
Uh,
nidasa and kuch nidasa, those are two related but opposite things.
Nick to come in.
Mm-hmm.
it's to breathe in, to inhale and exhale.
Breathe in,
Ah,
breathe out.
yeah, way.
Your body is a neich. We've got proof. It's home sweet home. Just tattoo it on your chest. Neich nukts neich, right? But yeah, so that's a good question. So kagenach. So in terms of like these encouragement terms and these other things, it kind of depends on what the situation calls for. There's a whole bunch of them that exist, and in intermediate Tlingit, we started going over them. Uh, I'll drop them on our class webpage that we've got. But some of them, yeah, because you could say Yan Han is like remain standing. Idat into Nak. We are we're surrounding you. We're supporting you. Um, when you look at like the Puig speeches, they'll say things like your opposites are listening to you. Um, Hawasa, that's really how it is, right? And then yeah, if you need to give someone encouragement, it's a bunch of stuff it's a bunch of stuff you can do, or trying to settle someone down. You can say jinak, which is let it go. But like if someone is really having a hard time and they're always things like it's a judgment call, right? Like if you don't want to be insensitive, but sometimes you do gotta, kind of say, stay away, or sheet cut, and it's like there's times when you kind of do that, like you shush a child, but you're not really shushing them, but you're doing this like shh, 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 shh. And you're trying to get them to stop crying, not because they're not supposed to cry, but you're just trying to settle them down, right? And so in Tlingit, there's a bunch of these things as well, and some you'll see them in the Raven stories, you'll see them in a variety of things. So yigo one, that's what Kakachkuk said when they started getting blown out to sea. And he's trying to give them more strength. Ituwu kletzin. I asked this, I was like, what is that K doing there? What the
Yeah.
hell? What? Why is there a K? Somebody help me out here. I take
Have a
this.
little strength.
Well, so that's saying like be brave. If I like, let's say we're pumping iron, and I'm trying to go like, be strong, ikletzin, be strong. That's like be physically strong. You could say iklawut, which would be like the command form for have fortitude. But look at this K keep popping up here. What are we doing? What are we doing, K?
Is it a G?
It is. Because how do you
Ah,
say be good? Be good now. Anybody know that one?
K. Ika K.
Igak, right? So what we see here in Igak, I guess I gotta move to a document at some point. Hold on. I'm just like putting stuff in the chat.
I cut and paste the whole thing before we're done.
It's document time. Okay. So let me. Okay, so we've got. Hold on. When I write letters, I was writing a letter last night, so I had to check my spelling. Okay. So we've got ituuklitzin. So just trying to analyze, like, what's going on here, right? So we've got igak, right? But so I guess the magic is kind of this. So you got you got ga, you got zero, you got k. So you only really have two things here. So you can go iga. You can absolutely go iga. No problem. If we go to this, we've got ga, kla, sin. Now we've got what Richard Dowenhauer liked to call the 3 strikes and you're out rule, right? And so we start to get into these rules of contraction, which I really want to start sort of breaking down. Like what's going to go, what's the pecking order? And there is a pecking order, right? So it's like if there's 3 people here, it's like, well, there's 3 of us and there's 4 pieces of sausage. We know how this goes. I get 2 and you each get 1, right? So whatever the thing is, right? So there's like these rules, right? And so one of the things is like, can't go anywhere, can't get any smaller, right? That's how you know that there's a second person there. It's an object, so it pops up way out here, right? So if it's an object, it has to be there for the second person command, right? Be that way. Ye inati. Be like that thing. Ayach inati. Sha, sha, it will stay like that. There are things that will make that letter A go away. But so what has to happen is the contraction has to happen here. So what happens is the letter A goes out. So it's okay, A's gotta go. We gotta drop a vowel. Tlingit, if Tlingit's like a boat full of sounds, and then everyone's like, boat's too heavy, the language will say, get one of those vowels out of here. It will always throw the vowels first. These vowels are just like Ishan, Ohan. So what happens if you take this letter A out? What happens?
The G's gonna bump into the L.
Well, so if, what am I doing? I'm trying to, why is it all red? Okay, hold on. Sorry. Okay, be black now. Okay, so if we take the letter A out of G, it will become K every time. So you could make the argument that that is a K sound, and the letter A turns it into G, just like you see with the possessive marker, right? Yak, yagu, same type of thing, right? So when G contracts, it becomes K. Very, very common. And so these are the things I want to cover. And we're going to look at a whole bunch of examples. It's not abstract. And what happens to qa if we take that out? It doesn't go under. Now this is one that sort of has, now it's like, okay, that one makes sense, but this one doesn't quite make sense.
Is it KW?
It's not a KW, it's not underline K. It's an underline something though.
X.
Yeah, because we go na, qa, tu, oops, at, right? Oh, there's a zero there, sorry. You're there, but
It
you don't.
wants to do a kinde.
So let's go. Na,
Not
To us.
tu, can't contract or else you lose the meaning. That A has got to get pulled, which means you get an underline X every time. Every time you take that A out, you got underline X. That's how it works.
Right. Sheesh.
But there's what I say, I'm never done. Okay, sorry. So if you have ga and cha, so I'm trying to like come up with these color codings. So red means it's going away. Orange means it's changing shape. Ga plus cha, what do you get?
Kwa.
Cha.
Oh yeah.
Let me let me go over there. Right? And we don't use that all the time. But this is going to help us. This is the katika for the hortative. I think. It's one of them.
Kane, why it might have sounded goofy, but before when I said the G is going to bump into the whatever it was, the way I look at it, if a G bumps into a consonant, it's going to turn into a K.
Right.
And that might be the same thing happening with the G and the ga and the ha. It's ha like that, hey? So your way, I think it's easier to, I think it's easier,
Yeah, no, but you're right. If
Yeah.
there's a consonant in that, then yeah, it's going to happen. Absolutely. Now, if it's, if we found, like, let me think of one. I gotta think of it.
But I'm wondering if it's only for a voiceless consonant, do you get a voiceless, if when it bumps into a voiceless consonant like the sh or the k, does it become a voiceless, underlined or, the same, yeah.
Yeah, I think it has to do, I think what you're gonna need is consonant vowel in the classifier. So what I'm trying to think of an example that is ga and plus D. I'll have to, I'll go digging because that's the thing. Cause like, for example, this isn't one. So we get, this is where we get, well, I guess if you're saying, okay, there is this version of it that has a subject and then that has a D plus S classifier and then it has T, right? So there's khat and kuchzati, and those are different verbs, right? Khat I exist, kuchzati I am living, right? So for example, if I want to say live a good life, there's a command form of this, right? So this is a qa, it's a state verb. So here we're gonna get ku, qisti. That's what I would expect for the command form for this. Live, qisti. I guess I'm doing CPRs. But I would say like gedein qisti, ayach qisti. live the correct way. If I'm bawling someone out, giving them tough uncle talk or whatever.
Mm.
Khosatin ya takatyaki aya. Or khosatin takyaki awa itinanuch with now. Ichide ayach ayach kukisti. But I'm not gonna talk to people like that. But if you want. And that's why you say kukakasti, right? So getting into the hordative, right? So but what I need to find here, so here you don't see, because there's no vowel there, right?
Mm.
So if there's no vowel, like it's like it almost doesn't count as a thing, I guess. Because here we have k, we have qa, we have I, and we have s and t. So s can't contract. There's nothing to take out of it. So here, what has to happen is, again, going with the orange, is these two are combined. So orange means they're combining to become something else. Red means that it goes away. And I want to find those patterns. I want us to work on those patterns so that they become understandable to us. Because we're doing a lot of this, what's this going to be? What's this going to be? What's that going to be? What's this going to be? But I want us to get to the underlying patterns and what's the mechanics there, so we can we become bold predictors then, I think. Because when you got ga, we're going to see this. That's why you get kuka, and that's why you get kukwa, and all of that stuff. It makes sense when you watch these patterns. Like it does it. It will follow these things, right? So if I put tu, gahtu, there it is, right? So the gah, there's nothing. I agree. There's no consonant there, but there is after this one. So that's what's going to trigger it. Good stuff.
Go ahead.
And that's why for ga, ga, 0, right? You really get the vowel. The vowels combine. So then you get ga. But if you put a vowel in front of that, ade, right? So for example, you'd say good. They're gonna walk. That's what I'm saying. They're gonna walk. Adekwagut. Now that because ade ends with a vowel, that triggers the contraction right there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good stuff. Nico, any other things that I can answer?
I've got another one unless somebody else wants to go.
Goodness, geez, that was helpful. It was parts of it were a little over my head, but it helpful.
Well, yeah, and we are going to do a walkthrough.
Yeah, but I feel like more stuck this time than before. So
Let's keep throwing Play-Doh at the wall. Eventually, it
Okay,
sticks.
so this is transforming into the kind of the uncle of the warrior space, so to speak. So trying to use this verb in a space of, well, let me just say it. Chushkatte dagenach na daseok shahi yidak. Chushkatte. Let them be quiet. Just let them be quiet and breathe calmly when under the shadow of the mountain.
Yeah, let them quiet themselves. Okay. I still would go with kagenach nidasa.
Nidasa.
Or naidasa.
Nidasa.
It took us a while to get that one. And so I do think, yeah. You go from, it's one of those ones, seok is how everybody hears it. But sa is what the verb root is. So when you go to a command and stuff, you take the K off. Just like yuchatunk. There's coming all the way back. Yuchatunk. There is a verb form. Yuchayatunk. They are talking. Switch that classifier back to -I. Yuchatunk. Noun. Language. Words. Speech. But most people hear that as with that K at the end. Yuchatunk. But you take that K off of it, you say yuchewatan. Or yuchatan. Guk, yuchatan. Speak. Good stuff. Okay, good questions, good thoughts. Now, back to more predictable stuff, maybe? Yokkehayati. This is where we left off, I think. Let me adjust a couple of screen adjustments here. Okay. We can say kadeik or kayadeik. I'm gonna suggest kadeik. That's how I've heard it. Oh yeah, gonna chish. And I will try to not have things in the chat and to have things on a document. I do think it's a lot easier to keep track of and to follow. So I will try and I usually do that. I don't know why. I was just like, maybe it's because I was just like popping in the chat the whole time. Okay, so I suggest kadeik for this one. To be ashamed, to feel shame. I think it's also embarrassment. So, sticking with our pattern, you are ashamed. Maybe not the best verb to do after like all our lateral kindness thing. Where it's just for practice, just for practice.
Ikadech.
Kadeir, yeah, away. Right? And so just remember that don't take that second person object off the verb. Don't do it. You'll make that little baby float in the water. Don't do it. They are ashamed.
Kadik.
Kadeir, geez, we're ashamed.
Kadesh.
Kadeir, geez, y'all are ashamed.
Yikadech.
Ye kadeir, right? They all are ashamed.
As kader.
Kadeir, people are ashamed. Should get kuka somewhere on there. Kadeir, yeah, away. Gonna cheesh. Okay. Why are we ashamed? Because was there a question?
Yeah, could you remind me the differences? I still haven't. I'm still not working off the updated beginning Tlingit, and it has the Kayadeh is the only thing listed. What's the difference between the two versions?
One is just contracting. It's just contracting a little bit. Yeah. So kayadeir is. I guess I hear kadeir. Um, yeah. So, yeah, you do have an optional contraction here. Very similar to kuwati and kuyati. So like I think most speakers in Sikha say kuyati. And then in other places I think they're saying kuwati.
Ne,
Ah,
Juan Tlein, could you please write how I would say I am ashamed of my face?
oh, okay. I would say yeah dot khat kadeeg. And then so this is, but this also has sometimes we talk about this naq, right? So here's khat kadeeg. So you could say yeah dot khat kadeeg. And this yeah dot could also come to the end. Kind of depends, like what's the most important thing that you're telling about? And then we did this, I think. Did we do this one? Oops, hold on. Did we do this one in here? Does anybody know what that is?
Dot.
Let's do Duke Kashkusi. Okay, there we go. Do we know what that
I
is?
have a question.
Okay, let's solve this puzzle and then I'll come to your question. That's okay. Duke Kashkusi. Anybody hear that before?
Their skin isn't bare.
Yeah, their skin doesn't exist, but this means they don't get embarrassed. However you spell it. Which was what, so this came up in another class because someone said, does this come from Tlingit? My grandma used to say, he's got no face. He never gets embarrassed. I was like, yes, that is, because Duke also means, well, a couple of things go on here. We usually hear Duke, probably much more commonly than Duke. Duke is skin, though. So Tlingit doesn't change these things. Just like glee is muscle. But we don't usually use it to talk about muscle. We just talk about meat. Right, but if we bring our language back to day-to-day use, because this happened with my daughter. She was like 5. She said, what's under my skin? I said, glee. She goes, meat? I was like, ah. Because English has to change. It's like, we don't eat muscle. We eat meat. We don't eat eggs. We eat pig muscle. We eat pork, right? So, but it's also, Duke is also complexion, which is wild. Okay, what's the question?
Why, when you say ach yadat chat kadech, how come it's not one word yadat?
Oh, yeah, dot, about my face. Right. Like, I don't,
Right. Did you understand my question?
yeah, dot, as being 2 words?
Yeah, how come it's not yadat? One word.
Because da is always a separate thing, except unless you make a compound noun, right? So like it's one of those things like tayi, da, kina. So it's what we call a relational noun or a relational base. So you'd say like ach da, I da, nadak da, right? And so it's one of these things that it is its separate word and it can take a suffix. So then usually, but there are times, like for example, sha yada. That is yada, one word, and that means around the face of a mountain, but it's becoming a compound noun.
So you can do it with mountain, but not with face.
Yeah, like you could, like if there was some sort of, like if we came up with a name for maybe like our Sukpiak friends who have these wonderful beaded headpieces and they got these danglies right here. So you could say something about yada something if you made a name. So like if it becomes a compound noun, which is usually a name, because Sha Yada is a place. It's before the mountain turns up to a peak, right? So a mountain has like ke, da, yada, ya, shaki. And that's how you could tell where you're at on the mountain, right? And it also tells you how you need to keep going. Because once you get to yada, you got to start going zigzagging or unless you're hardcore and just like a 18-year-old crawls up the thing like a mountain goat. Yeah, that's a good question.
I've
So
got a question.
does it have,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, does it have anything to do with the accent? So when you go YA accent, does that specifically mean face, human face?
Well, it's usually a face, but it could also be a vertical surface. Like you say, yeah, that's the wall. Board face, I guess. And is the ceiling or the floor.
Okay, Kasank Gukde.
Ganchish.
Kashe.
How come we haven't separated the EI into another vowel? Because sometimes I hear speak the a for that vowel, but then we go da ge nach na da seok. So it gets the AE sound to it. And it happens amongst all the elders I've ever worked with. They'll have that EI that's just the A, but there'll be some places where it switches to A. Nadaseko. It's not nadaseko. It's always nadaseko. There's another vowel there. A.
Well, that's a good question. I would say like I would expect sek, just like sate. It could be something there, could be a dialect thing. It could also be sort of a sliding thing, like there's just certain patterns that start creeping in. Like when you go to beginning Tlingit classes, when they say necklace, a lot of people are probably saying say it because it should be just sate.
Hmm.
But if you said like don't breathe, uh, it might be sek, but it could also be sayek.
Or kakwanish, ka shakshani, kashtakaish, they all hastu achenach that way. I wanted to say Yahweh, but
Ayach you has Adyach you has atkin. They used to talk like that. But there could be something too, because sometimes you just have a K, right? Like you atunk. Sometimes you have a KW, like do wasak. And there is a thing that happens here. Like for example, like when does this rounding take place? Because sometimes I'll hear people say yak, and then sometimes I'll hear people say yao. And I don't think that either one is right or wrong, but I think sometimes maybe if this rounding is happening here, it might be affecting what's on this side. Because, same with, I do hear a lot of the speakers, I remember just saying do wasak, and it just sounds like AAKW. But then I do hear some people say do wasak. And again, I don't know if this is a dialect thing or if this is common or if this is influenced by, just languages change, right? Sometimes there's pronunciation changes because, if you go back, we just jumped in our Tlingit time machine, which is probably like a Studebaker or something. And we go way back, like 200 years ago. And if people are saying, like we're saying this right now, if you go back then, they're either going to say it like this or they're going to say it like this.
Yildi.
Do wadi or do nyadi.
Yildi.
So I'm guessing if you went back 150 years, they'd say do wadi. If you go back 300 years, they're probably saying do nyadi.
Yahweh.
Good questions.
Conchish.
You don't think that the KW pronunciation, which is, we have to put the letters in an order, but that's not the way it is. It's a rounded K.
Yeah, well, and there's a whole bunch of these. Like, if there's a whole bunch of speakers, if you hear them say, like make this sound,
And you don't think that's regional?
it's hard to say. Like I think there needs to be. There's so much stuff. If someone wants to study some of this stuff, like there's so many of these realms, I think would be really worthwhile to study. There's a lot of studying that's going on in Tlingit that I think is for the linguistic community. So like if you end up with papers that I could make sense of it if I read it. I was like, okay, there's a bunch of words. Like I don't know what they're talking about. But then there are some things like, for example, if you listen to some speakers, it sounds kind of like they're saying "huinach." Like almost every time they're getting this thing, there's a W that comes after it. And then also like if something ends with a KW, like when does that rounding take place? Like sauknin or sauknin, right? And so those are some things, and that could be absolutely a regional thing. But we need to sort of do a deep dive and do some really close listening on some of those things. And trying to isolate it in a speech act instead of just saying, say this, say that, right? Because
Ah,
they'll overthink it, and then they'll end up sort of saying it maybe different than they would in the flow of conversation.
mhm. One of my favorite people in Tlein, she always says Tawan when going to town, just like you're kind of alluding to there.
Mhm.
Just got Tawan. I'm going to Tawan. She
They
always
old
says,
Klukwan speakers also did the O thing, like they'd say Yanakuch as opposed to Yanakuch.
ah,
Okay,
sheesh.
we gotta get stingy now. Stingy
Hmm.
guy, yeah. Everything we need to know is given to us right here. How are we gonna predict I am stingy? What do we need to remember? We're gonna go with this qayq. If you're from Tassanima, you might say qayq. If you're from cake, you would say qayq.
Kachikbalik.
Kachikayq, right? So we're sticking with objects. SH, look at that, state verb, SHI, sh. That's what we should expect for the classifier. This little X means it's always long and low. Qayq, qayq, qayq. Kachikayq. Yeah, well. You are stingy.
Ishake.
Ishaqayq. They, singular, are stingy. It's just a drill. We're not really saying it about them.
Shake.
Shaqayq. We're stingy.
Shigik.
Hashaqayq. Y'all are stingy.
Ye shigik.
Yishaqayq. They all are stingy.
Ashikik.
Hashaqayq. People are stingy.
Kashigake.
Yeah, or kushaqayq. Kushaqayq.
Pushigake.
Okay. Sheesh. Right, so once we see shaqayq is the verb, changing the object should be really straightforward. There's nothing that can contract right here. It's shaqayq all the way down. Shaqayq, 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 shaqayq. There's nothing that contract there, that can contract. So we just change the object, we roll it through. Khat, nothing. Ha, yi, has, ku.
Nay.
Ah.
This is true in other conjugations as well. The negative, the future.
Well, okay, so let's, yeah, that's a good question. Let's take our verb here, because maybe it's funny when we do some of these verbs. I feel like there's a fist fight coming afterwards. You stingy, right? Okay. So someone says to you, "Ishaqayq." Oh, Ishan has, Ishan them. But if you want to say no, what's it going to be? So here we've got khatchiqiq. What are the parts? It's not too many parts, right? Those are all the parts right there. Khatchiqiq. But what has to happen here, if we're going to add tlein, then we get to khat, that stays the same. What has to change? Qayq will be the same.
Becomes sha, except the A drops out.
Sha. And there's one other thing.
The Ariels.
You have to have Once you have clash, you have to have
Have
If touches sha, hla, or sa, it will knock the A out of there. Get out of here, A. So that must become ush. Khat ush qayq.
Do you say the rule about the A has to leave?
Yeah, okay. I gotta What did I have? Okay, hold on. Yes.
Gonna
Pneumonia.
choose.
Where did I have that? Okay, I've got this big slideshow that we are going to work through. Here it is. Okay. So this is our color-coded slideshow that's forthcoming. This is the next one after. I'm excited about it because all the colors are going to match the board game. Maybe by like 2024, the board game will be fully realized. Who knows? Okay. So here's our list of things. And just all you got to remember, if any of these things, na, ka, y, daqa, or d, touch those classifiers with the letter A in them, sa, sha, and sha. Those are the only ones, just those three. They will knock that A out of there. That's why you say chasa'i, isa'i, us'i. I'm cooking it, you're cooking it, they're cooking it. Us'i. Then when you say tesh chwasaku, tesh awusku, it's because of this right here. What's these two, right? But in this case, tesh ush qeq. That Irialis says, get that A out of here. There's nothing to protect it, right? The only thing that could protect it is a subject, right? And there's no subject in stingy. It's an object, it uses an object. Na, ka, ya. So these are the things, right? And it has to be ka. It can't be, if it contracts to the underlying X, then it won't cause that. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. But that's why you say it, kesh awuska. That's why you say it. Okay. Geesh. Where am I? We did this one. Okay. What do we need to, everything's given to us, everything. We already know that we're just going to change the objects. What's classifier going to be? Se. State verb, imperfective. Shewut. Not going to change. It's got to stay long and high all the time. I am mentally strong. Hatlewut. Yeah, well, you are mentally strong. Itlewut. They are mentally strong. Tlewut. We are mentally strong. Hatlewut. Y'all are mentally strong. Yitlewut. They all are mentally strong. Haslewut. People are mentally strong. Bashawut. Insider secret, if you change to ch, it's stubborn. So if you say hashewuch, we are stubborn. Ooh, I think we're almost to the end. I see red coming. Get to subjects. Last one. We are going to, oh, go ahead. We're going to have yay in front of it. When it's in parentheses, that means it's optional. It might be there, might not be there. For this one, it's usually there, right? but we saw Tlein, like it might go away for Tlein. Object, we're changing the object. State verb, imperfective, plus I. Classifier is going to be ya, yeti, yeti, yeti. This little letter H means when you put a habitual or repetitive suffix on it, it's going to stay low. That's what that little H means. The little one means that there's some other T. There's one for handling things. There's one for imitating. So, yati. That's our expectation. Yati. I am that way. Echat yati. You are that way.
Yay, ET.
Yati. They, singular, are that way.
Yayati.
Yati. We're that way.
Yehayati.
Yati. Y'all are that way.
Yeyati.
Yati. They all are that way. Plural.
Yehasyati.
Yes. This has another form. Anybody know what that is?
Yes, yeti.
Yes, yati.
Yati.
So if there's a vowel in front of, there's something ends with a vowel in front of hus, it can just turn to a letter S. Yes, yati. Ateskunuguye. The way they exist. People are that way. We are going to use ka here, or else it sounds like weather.
Yekayati.
Yekayati, right? And as we do these drills, here's something to keep in mind. Like sometimes, like I'll put this whole slideshow up to this point. We want to go through, keep practicing. We are focusing on this object pronoun, but look at where the tone is. So I probably do this all the time as I teach this stuff. I'll be like, yehayati, yeyati, right? Yehayati, yeyati, yehasyati, yekayati. Those are all long and low. Well, long, low, short, low, long, low. Ooh, made it to the red. We're seeing red now. What's I going to be for a subject?
Ha.
Ha. What about we?
Tu.
Tu. You.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yeah.
In a professional, you'll get it. It. Right? Now, the one we just heard. Second person plural. Y'all. You all.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about they? Everybody just said it. Good job. It is always nothing. It is always, always, always unmarked. For a third person, they did it, they're doing it, you never put a pronoun there. You just keep that in mind because I think a lot of people, they just want to put de in there. They want to put something in there because English would have a real hard time with that. Well, I did it, and then you did it, and then did it, right? Like it just, but that's how Tlingit works, right? So what about they all?
Us.
Yeah, aware. And someone, or people, or it happened. Fourth person, human.
Duh.
Duh. These are all of the if you go back to the object list, there are other objects, right? We're not going to deal with them right now, but there are other ones. To the self, to each other, this person we were talking about, this other person, right? There are other ones. But for this is all of them. every single one. So you just got this sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things to remember. Hus goes on the outside, right? So this will be a little different because it's built into the verb, will affect how things go. But in beginning Tlingit, we start with verbs that don't have a whole lot of stuff in there. So what you're going to see here is all of these ones. So if you went through that whole list of ones that we just did, those are all objects, no subjects. So then we switch to all subjects, no objects. That way you don't have them affecting each other. That's the logic of what the Dauenhauers have developed, had developed, and what we still use today. Okay. Positional verbs, there's usually only is and isn't. They really like to be they're imperfective. So because it's imperfective, I will give you the stem. It's going to be ah, long and high. Because it's positional, the classifier will be minus I, so it's just going to be 0. So you're not going to hear anything in the classifier. So when we get to these, there are a lot of them, there's going to be 2 sounds. I, huh?
Dauenhower rule suke.
Oh,
Subjects, objects.
When, well, in beginning Tlingit, there wasn't a chapter that really focused on objects, but there is a chapter that focuses on subjects. First, second, third, first, second, third, first, second, third, right? It does it, I can't remember the order that they went in. But there's a whole bunch, all of these verbs that they picked don't have an object. They are subject only, so you don't have to worry about changing them. But then, so I added a chapter in the workbook that was objects only.
Hmm.
And then we're doing, and that one we do first because that's the one that comes first. Then we do subjects. And that book is out. Okay. And so this one we are changing the order too. We're gonna go third person, second person, first person. So just keep that in mind. Don't panic. But sometimes you gotta we're not gonna go too crazy with the order. But I think that's the way they had it in the book, so I just followed the way they did. So this one, there are some third person verbs where it is only the stem. They are sitting. Yeah. Zero, zero. You are
Yeah.
yeah. We're getting enough. Okay. Are there two people?
You turned your sound off?
Oh, okay. I got you.
Maybe you then.
Yeah.
Is it, you want me to turn it up?
Yeah, I think you're fine. Okay. So and 0 gets you e, right? It does go long. This is a pattern that you are going to see. I am sitting. Yeah. So we are also going to add the plural for this. But what's going to happen to this verb? Anybody know?
Different verb.
It's different.
Root has to change. There's a lot of positional verbs and motion verbs. The root there'll be something that changes when it goes plural. And in this case, we're going to have qi. And then I think there's going to be an N on it.
Clean.
Yeah. So
Echucha says that the plural, if you're sitting with somebody, it switches to keen, even if it's just one person you're sitting with.
oh, okay. Yeah, well, yeah, well, okay. So is that, I think it's long and high, if I remember right. We'll find out. But we are sitting. Keen. Okay. Now, here comes another rule. T is short unless there's no vowel in the classifier. Then it is long. T is short unless there's no vowel in the classifier. Then it's long. Tu, tus, tush, tush, or tuwa, tudde, tudda, tusse. Right? That's the whole thing, how it goes. Same with I. I is short unless there's no vowel in the classifier. Then it will be long. Y'all are sitting. Tu, ye, 0, do.
Keen.
Yaqeen, but ye likes to stay ye. Ye says, I don't like going long. I'm fine how I am. They all are sitting. So we had these objects down, right? We had them
Haskin.
asking, right? So again, nothing there for the subject marker. People are sitting. Oh wait, I think we're gonna get an unusual one here. Coming back to the book of exceptions, for a lot of motion verbs and position verbs, and for sleeping and a few others, the fourth person is a, which is interesting. It's in the object spot, just like when you'd say like awacha. For example, you could say chwagut, yigut, wugut, awagut. Wild stuff, blowing your mind at 7 o'clock. But that's just, it is also predictable, but it's sort of like, oh yeah, here's this other thing, right? It's like you go in the store and I just keep telling, oh, and also get some cheese. Oh, and also get some broccoli, right? Every time I just keep adding to the list, and you can't write it down, right? But we can write it down, right? We just have to sort of keep introducing this thing. And someone did have the wonderful idea of expanding the verbs that are in the beginning Tlingit workbook and adding the plurals. But the reason why the Downhowers didn't add the plurals because it gets complicated fast. But it's all still predictable. It's just like saying you just got to get this set of rules. And it's not like if you said tuqeen, you're going to be like, what? Nobody knows what that means. It's not that big a deal. It's just sort of like put this in your box of fine tuning. Duqeen, though, doesn't work, unfortunately.
Would that mean with your butt? That almost sounds like that's.
Well, okay. So we talked about kindness a little while ago, right? So kindness, we said tutla'an for the noun, tutla'an for the verb. What is the conjugation type of this verb? Anybody know? It's a state verb, so you should have a really good guess for it.
Yeah.
Most state verbs are
Yeah.
go. So it also takes an object. So how would you command someone, right? So let's go back to ikake, right? Be good now. How would you command someone to be nice? That's what you're gonna have. But you have four things there. It can't go. Can't go.
Tlein.
That's right. You say this to a kid that you're raising in Tlingit, what do you think they're gonna say to you? It took Sha'an. What about my butt? So for this one, here's our key. Here's our katecha to go home. Although let's leave it at that. So I said, well, I'm not going to use the command form of this verb ever because kids will it'll be butt jokes all day. And then they're not even worried about being nice. They're just laughing and have a good time, which is fine. So as a parent raising a kid in Tlingit, there's a lot of times where I just use a second person future, right? So you look at your child and say, you're going to be nice. Because sometimes you do that as a parent. You just lay down the law. What is it going to be, though? Can't forget this part.
Go. Ga. Ga. Sha'an.
So now the parts we need in the verb, and we're going to have ga, u, ga, tla, on. Right? So now we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. So we do have all our standard rules of, right? Won't go, ga, ga. That's the one that's got to go. We got to knock out this vowel right here. Letter A. Let me get my colors back. So I'm going to make this red, so that's got to go. So then we should get I, to.
Tlein.
I'm going to turn this orange.
Oh.
Because it doesn't fully go away. It combines with this one. Right.
Oh. It to Tlein.
That's why you always get guchla, guchsha, guchsa, guchta every time. Every time. Non-negotiable has to be guch, consonant a. And then you get on, but there's still something missing. What's the missing thing and why? One last thing.
Peg vowel? No.
Hi, an.
No, this one is invariable. It has to stay long and low. But the missing element has to do with this thing right here.
A. A. Oh, yay.
Every future form of a ga verb must have K. You cannot leave it out. You cannot forget it. Every qa verb for the future must have what?
Yay.
Yay.
Right? So these are also non-negotiable things. But then but without these rules, we will just guess. We'll throw K in front of stuff just at random. Because I don't know, sometimes they do K, sometimes they do yay, whatever. It all comes down to the conjugation type of the verb, which is why when we learn new verbs, we sort of, just like this practicing we've been doing. Oh, okay, it's got an object. Does it have a subject? What type of verb is it? What's the conjugation? Once I've got that, I can use that verb any way I want to. Once we learn all these sort of rules. Good cheesh, yakechawe.
Cheesh.
So for Monday, kashkawu, taka, kadeshitana, kushkas, wushlikas, I think it's called. And then And we'll talk. We'll talk about migrations and all those mosquitoes are going to sleep now, finally. Now those fruit flies, I always got these little flies. Great stuff, good questions. If you want to, I'm gonna stop the recording.